Okay, you're going to see this slide every time with art history as we get into a chapter. So there's so much art history and never enough time to cover it all. So let's go run through the art museum. All right, so let's go to page 10. I want you to start on page 10. All right, and up here is a reminder in the header of the next empty space of your empty page of your sketchbook, write chapter 1. So we made the header for page 10. So up in the header of page 10, you're going to write chapter 1. And on every page that is notes for chapter 1, you're going to write chapter 1 in the header. Some people may take up 20 pages for notes for chapter 1. Highly unlikely, but some people may only do 1 page for notes. So as I'm grading your sketchbooks, I need to see what these notes are about. And when students don't have a header up there telling me this is chapter 1 notes, I get lost, and it's difficult for me to grade your sketchbooks. So every page that we're taking notes, write what chapter we're on at the top. And so go to your table of contents, find chapter 1, and next to chapter 1, next to that dotted line, I want you to write 10. That's the page that we're starting on. And when we start chapter 2, everybody's going to be on a different page when we start that, okay? And then this is also a reminder that 5 hand-drawn sketches per chapter. Okay, let's begin. What does BC stand for? That is correct. Correct. I heard somebody say before Christ. Then what does AD stand for? Oh, by the way, anything that's written in green, I want you to write down. All right. It's something that'll be on the test for definite. Anything that is written in purple, it's the concept I want you to know, not those particular words. All right. So things that are in green are definitely going to be on the test. Things that are in like this purple color are going to be, it's the concept that I want you to know. So pay attention to that. Take your own notes for that. All right. What does AD stand for? It is Latin. That is correct. It means the year of our Lord. What does year? What is year in Latin, or even in Spanish? The word year in Spanish is ano, right? And our Lord in Spanish, what would that be? Not that would be Christ. Right. Anyways, Anno Domini, right, is Latin for the year of our Lord. I'm so glad you didn't say after death. That's what everybody says when I ask this question, and that is a incorrect statement. All right, now in modern textbooks, you'll see BCE. What does BCE stand for? Before the Common Era. It's the same thing as BC. And then CE would mean Common Era. All right, now why would they change from BC to BCE and AD to CE? And the change is to make it religious neutral. Whereas BC and AD are Christian terms, and not everybody in the world is Christian. So they changed it to make it more neutral. Now, I am old school, and so I'll be using BC and AD. If you want to use BCE and CE, that's fine with me. There's also another term that I came across when doing art history, and it's called BP. And I've seen this a few times in art history. And BP stands for before the present. So we're going to start our art history journey with the Paleolithic era. And paleo means old. What does lith mean? Lith means stone. There's a printing process called lithography where they print with stones. A monolith is a large stone. All right, so we are starting around 30,000 BC, and we're starting with the Cro-Magnon. Human beings began to create intentional manufactured objects. And this is a time when humans changed from makers of stone tools to artists. And Paleolithic art refers to the late Upper Paleolithic era. So this began roughly around 40,000 years ago and lasted through the Pleistocene Ice Age, which ended about 8,000 BCE or BC. And this is the rise of the Homo sapiens and their ever developing ability to create tools and weapons. So these early civilizations had no concept of art, and everything they made had a primary purpose. Right? And there was no aesthetic purpose. Does everybody know what aesthetic means? Aesthetic is how something looks. So if I'm looking at a hot rod with a flame job on it and I say, I like the aesthetics of that car, am I talking about how fast that car goes? I'm talking about how the car looks. All right, so are we good? All right, so let's get into the art. So the first place that we're going to look at is in Africa. On this map, can you find Africa? Yes, it is the easiest continent to find. All right, so if we get a close look at Africa, now the next question is, where is Nambia? It's okay, I don't expect you to know. I didn't know when I was doing this. All right, Nambia is down there. All right, so then we're going to look for the Apollo 11 cave, which is in Nambia. And so the archaeologist was working in the cave when he heard that the Apollo 11 spacecraft landed back on Earth. And so he called it the Apollo 11 cave. So the first works of art in history come from Africa. And this is what they look like. These are the Apollo 11 stones. All right, one source tells me that these are 23,000 BC. Another source told me 27. Another source told me 25,000 BC. So they're just guessing as to the age of the stones and the age of the pigment. These are 7 small portable stone fragments with charcoal on them. As we take these notes, I will have the titles up at the top of the picture, the dates. So the titles will be in the top left, dates will be in the top right, and then the style of the artwork or the era of the artwork will be in the lower right. I like having that era at the lower right because sometimes students like tune in and out. And so if you've tuned out for a while and you can look up and see where we are. All right, so if we get a closer look at this one right here, these are the oldest pieces of mobile art. And mobile art means you can carry it with you. Most of the art from this era is not mobile. Like things that you can carry with you get broken over time, they get lost over time. Having a mobile work of art that is this old is very rare. All right, I'm going to give you guys a vocabulary term, and that is a profile view. And basically, it's the side view of something. If I stood up here to the side and you're just looking at the profile view of my face, you're seeing one eye, one ear, one nostril, half my mouth, etc. That is a profile view. If I look at you like this is a frontal view. So the animal that is on here, we are seeing from the side. We're not seeing it from the front. We're not seeing it from a 3/4 view. It is a profile view. All right, so our next artwork is going to be found in Europe. Where is Europe on this map? That is correct. It's just above Africa. That is correct. And then we're going to go to Western Europe. What countries are in Western Europe? Yes, Great Britain is in Western Europe. The colored ones are Western Europe. So what are some of the countries? Yes, Italy is in Western Europe. This is France. This is Spain, England, and Ireland, Germany, Sweden, Finland, Austria. Okay, yeah, in Eastern Europe are some of the other European countries that I'm not as familiar with. However, you've heard of Ukraine, right? So this is Ukraine, and they're in war right now with Russia. And then right above it is Belarus. This is Turkey over here. And basically, these are all the countries that split off from the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union fell. All right, so in here, which one is Germany? Yeah, Germany kind of looks like Pac-Man. Right? And then we're going to go to the southern Germany area, the Swabia area, and there's this cave in there. And we're going to look at these bone fragments that were found in the cave. Hundreds of bone fragments were found. And this archaeologist took these bone fragments and assembled them together. And these are mammoth ivory fragments. What's a mammoth? Yeah. So his name is Joachim Hahn, and in 1969, he is putting these fragments together. Then comes along Elizabeth Schmidt, and she combines the bones in new ways, and she corrects his errors, and they all fit to make this figure right here. It's called lion head. It is a human with a feline head, like a lion head or a cougar head or something. It is of unknown gender, and it's carved out of ivory with a flint knife. And so they wonder if this animal headed human is a sorcerer or a magician, or is it a human dressed up as an animal? But this is the oldest zoomorphic sculpture in the world. Zoo means animal, morph means change. And it's one of the oldest figurative pieces of figurative art discovered. And the vast majority of prehistoric sculptures are either people or animals. All right, and so on the left is a good drawing of it. You can see it from different points of view. And then on the right, you can see this is an illustration showing what part of the bone it would have been from. And then in 2012, they disassembled it and reassembled it with new parts added in, and it looks like this now. Just kidding. All right. So now we're going to go to Austria. Where is Austria? What continent is Austria in? It's in Europe. So let's go to Europe. Which one of those is Austria? It's close to what? Yes, it is close to. It borders Germany and Italy. It's in between Germany and Italy. It's that red one right there. That's Austria. And we're going to go to the far side of the eastern portion of Austria, and we're going to go to Willendorf. Spelled with a W, pronounced with a V. Willendorf. Here's the archaeological site at Willendorf. And this is the figure, Venus of Willendorf. All right, she's 4 inches tall. How tall is 4 inches? Yeah, it fits in your hand, right. And she's made of oolitic limestone, which is not local to where they found it. So that means somebody carried it to where it was found. It was made in one place, carried to another place, and that is an important fact. The artist probably had a curved stone and accentuated with the carving. So it is highly likely that the stone that this was carved from looked a lot like this, and there were only minimal changes made to it to make it look like a woman. So he was probably looking at a stone and said, "Hey, that looks like a woman," and then carved it to make it look more like a woman. And she is not a specific woman. It's not actually Venus. She's called Venus, but she is a symbol of womanhood. All right, now, if you look at this woman, what kind of body style does she have? Is she thin or large? Yeah, she's large. All right. And this is an idealized woman. This is meant to be a desirable woman. So, why would a large woman be a desirable woman? Yes, right. It is large women were able to survive pregnancy better than thin women. Thin women would die in childbirth or afterwards. So large women were seen as more desirable because they could bear children. I do want to point out, do you see her arms? Her arms are going up over her breasts. So she's standing like this right here. And then she's faceless and has this odd hair. We'll get a close up of that. You can see how large this figure is. By the way, that's a copy of it, not the actual thing. And then we can, if we look at the detail, we have this texture in the hair. So it's hard to tell, did she have curly hair? Or was she wearing some sort of a hat? But this texture reminds me of crochet. And again, this goes to the idea of a desirable woman. So, like back in the 60s, there was this movie called 1 Million Years BC, and it starred Raquel Welch. And Raquel Welch was the most sexual and beautiful woman of that time in 1966. And many men desired Raquel Welch. And in the comic on the left, it is showing the difference in attitudes of what is beautiful and what is not. In 1966, Raquel Welch is the most beautiful, but in 20,000 BC, it is the Venus of Willendorf that he is holding that is the most beautiful. Now we're going back to Europe, and we're going to look for France. Which one is France? Yes, it's the big one to the left. Yes, it's the red one. All right. And we're going to go down to the southern part of France next to Spain. And there were three teenage brothers who were exploring a cave, and they found this artwork called Two Bison. Okay, so in the cave, they found this sculpture of two bison, and it appears as though the clay that was used on the sculpture came from a different part of the cave. It shows thought and it shows premeditation to take a substance from one part and use it in another part. It's not like they just found it there and they built it there. That it shows a change in the human thought processes. All right, so as we get closer, we'll take a closer look at the two bison, and here they are. Here's a photograph of the two bison. They're about 2 feet long, each of them, and they have cracks from the drying of the clay. And these prehistoric artworks are almost 100% animals. There are very, very few people in prehistoric art. And that's, later on a test, I'm going to ask you, What's the difference between Paleolithic and Neolithic art? That's one way you can tell is that, if it's just animals, chances are it's Paleolithic. And these things were carved using like a spatula type tool and their fingers. They used a stone burin tool for the details. This next artwork has two titles. One title is Bison licking an insect bite. Another title is Bison with the head turned. I don't think so. I think this is separate, right? And I don't have where this is. The other one is specific, like because it's in the cave. It hasn't moved from the cave, so that's why I talked about the location of it. With Venus of Willendorf, um, I showed you where it was found, and also the name Willendorf. That suggests the location of it. But not all of these objects that I'll tell you about have the location with it. But that was a good question. So this is made out of an antler. It's about 4 inches long. It's about the size of Venus of Willendorf. And it is a sculpted antler. And again, it shows the profile of a bison. But notice how his head has been turned backwards. And that's probably to save the space on the antler. And here's what I think: very similar to Venus of Willendorf, I think somebody found a broken piece of an antler and looked at it and thought to themselves, "Hey, that kind of looks like a bison," and then used a sharp tool to carve the head of this. I think the only part of this that was actually carved is the head, and the rest of it just looked like a bison. In fact, this is what bison do. So this could be a very realistic view of a bison. Elsewhere in France, we're going to go to the La Selle cave. You don't have to write La Selle. That will not be on the test. I need to turn it white. But I do want you to know a woman holding a bison horn. She's made out of limestone. Now, look at her body type. What does that remind you of? Yes, right. It is Venus of Willendorf. So, what from taking what you know from Venus of Willendorf, what can you say about this woman? Right. What's the fancy word for preparing for childbirth or fertility? Right. So we're looking at probably a fertility goddess. Her left arm is resting, her left hand is resting on her pregnant belly. And then what's with the bison horn? I wonder if that's sort of magical symbol. Like if she's maybe if they thought that she's a goddess, maybe the bison horn is like her symbol. Or maybe the bison horn symbolizes strength. Maybe the bison horn symbolizes fertility. Nobody really knows. A lot of very smart art historians make some very educated guesses. And it's been painted with red ochre. And I bet you're wondering, what's this red ochre stuff you're talking about? Well, this is red ochre. Right, these red colored rocks and dirt. So red ochre gets broken up into these little rocks and then crushed into a powder and then either mixed with water or mixed with animal fat or just the powder is put up on the wall, and that's how they would paint these pictures or these images on the wall. There's also yellow ochre. It's just very yellowy rocks and dirt, and you take these chunks and you grind them into a paste or you grind them into powder. You can mix it with water, you can mix it with animal fat, or you just wipe it onto the wall, the powder, and it will stain the wall. So we'll start looking at cave painting now. And again, here's what I'm talking about. This cave art, these people don't have time for making art like this. Did I talk to you guys yesterday about coming home and doing your laundry and stuff? Okay, so I recorded that already. All right. So let's check this out. This is a short little video on how Paleolithic artists painted. By the way, for those at Sci Park, you probably won't hear the audio for this. Anyways, you can take the charcoal that is in from a fire and you crush it up, or you can take these pieces and you can rub them against the wall and it makes lines. We're out of here in 6 more minutes. So we're going to see some cave art that looks like this. And so now you have an idea of how it was drawn. And that is ochre right there. It's hard to tell if it's yellow ochre or red ochre. But what they do is they crush it up. And they just use their fingers to wipe it onto the walls. All right, and that's how cave artists or the Paleolithic artists made their artworks. So we're going to move on from that, and we're going to go to Europe again. You already know where Europe is, and this time we're going to go to Spain. Where is Spain on this map? Where's Spain? Yeah, right. I see people pointing at the bottom. Right, it's way at the bottom, and then so we look at Spain. We're going to go way to the top of Spain, and then we're going to go to the Cantillana del Mar. So you notice the gate on this, the entrance of this cave, and as the people walk in, these scientists walk in. How are they dressed? Like look at like they're all covered up. Why are they all covered up? That's right. It's exactly right. They don't contaminate the artwork. That is not to protect them. It's not. It's to protect the artwork. So the story goes at Altamira Cave. I can't even pronounce this guy's name. Saltuola and his 8-year-old daughter Maria are exploring a cave on his estate in 1879. They had already found lots of carved bones and stone tools and flint, but as they are exploring their cave, because she is small, she can look up. And when she looks up, she sees all these things on the ceiling. And these things then are, these are bison that's up there. And um, so in 1880, nobody believed him that he had found these things. They thought that it was a hoax. The paintings were too high quality and there was no soot marks, meaning the Paleolithic artists were not burning fires in this cave because when the fires go out and the smoke goes up, it turns into soot, and with this there would have been like a black film over this. So there wasn't any of that. And one person said that that he had hired a contemporary artist to paint these images. But as more caves were discovered and better examination of this cave, and it showed that there was layers of clear mineral over the painting, and that can only happen over thousands of years. So he was proved to be right, but he wasn't vindicated until in 1902, but he had died in 1888. So he had died when people were thinking that he was a hoax. But you know what these things remind me of? There's an episode of Star Trek that has these things on the ceiling that fly around and attack you, and then they attack them and shot them with their phasers. But that's what these things remind me of, like that. All right. Anyways, there's a whole bunch of these images of these bison and bull, and they're not related to each other. So like they're not aligned the same way. It doesn't tell a story. All these are just randomly placed. And there's 10,000 years difference between the first ones that were painted and the last ones that were painted. So that means that an artist painted on the ceiling, thousands of years later, another artist painted on the same spot, and thousands of years later, another artist painted on the same spot. So the yellow circle shows one group that was painted at one time. The red shows another group that was painted at another time. And then the pink shows another group that was painted at another time. But that's what these figures are. They are bison. And we are going to stop there.